Okay, so welcome to our podcast, VIK. This is our first episode, and I'm really excited and very happy to have our first very important guest to talk about wine harvest and the wine industry. Today we have with us Zekun Shuai. Second, after you will tell me how to pronounce very good your last name. Senior editor of James Suckling, based in Hong Kong. Second, thanks for joining us and to be with us today.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Thanks for having me here, Cristián. It's a pleasure to join you in the podcast. I think we do a lot of podcasts these days now. People listen to the conversations. Should be fun, no?
Yes. What we look for here is to have a little bit of your experience and to tell us your vision and that side that normally nobody knows exactly, because normally it's the other side. You know, everybody talk about the wine, the winemakers, the winery, but in this case, we want to know about your experience. So to start, it's possible that you tell us a little bit your experience, your background. I think that you taste, I don't know, a lot of different wine, amazing wine from different part of the world. So your experience must be very exciting in terms of all that you see, all the sensations. Can you tell us a little bit about that amazing experience?
Sure, no, of course. I've been tasting for Suckling.com since 2019. So about 6 years. So a long time covering Chile, for example. Since 2020, I started covering Chilean wines. Basically, we taste about 1,500 Chilean wines year after year. Sometimes 2,000, sometimes 1,200 is around that number. So we do taste a lot of wines. I also taste other countries. I used to taste a lot of Argentinian wines, Spanish wines, Chinese wines, the country where I'm from, and also now more Bordeaux wines as well. So I do think, because we have this kind of experience, because I personally taste about 6,000 to 700,000 wines a year. So we do sort of have this kind of a global perspective, what you said, and also the experience to compare, the countries, and especially the countries that you're covering, which now most importantly, one of the most important countries is Chile for me.
Great. It should be very exciting to visit every country and to have that experience to taste the wine, but also to know and to get into the different terroirs through the wine. I love Chile, of course, because I'm a Chilean winemaker. But I worked in France, in Bordeaux, and so I saw you with some of the pictures that you upload in Instagram that you were tasting in Bordeaux, and when I saw that, I said, "Oof, I would like to be there tasting those wines." So, but let's talk about Chile. The idea is to go into the vintage 2022, which is a very special vintage. So the first impression of that vintage. Normally, for example, I have some numbers here. The temperature, the 2022 average was a little bit cooler than the 21, 13 against 13.5. The average temperature, the minimum also was lower. The maximum was 1 degree lower. It was called the 23rd year as a warmer, and the 21 was the second warmer. The 21 was a very dry year. The 22 was only dry, and the most cold year in the 10 last years. The 22 was called the coolest, and the 21 the warmest. So, what's your impression about the year 22? Because it was a little bit tricky that year.
Yeah, it was a bit tricky for us. Also, for journalists, I think who cover the country, we have this kind of a we don't talk enough about the vintages in Chile, because people think vintages are very consistent in Chile. Normally, you don't have a really bad year, not like Bordeaux. It's like maritime climate. What you have is more stable Mediterranean climate in general. So you don't tend to talk a lot about that. But nowadays, I remember just what I was telling you about it. This year, I was going to Puente Alto, going to Amaviva, and Michel Friot was telling me, since 2016 or 17, that was the year. Okay, people started to talk about it, because you had a very rainy year, then you had such a dry, hot year in 2017. Then you had a very similar hot and dry year in 19, and especially 2020, one of the, probably the most challenging years. You remember that, right?
Yes.
And 21, then comes 21, very good year. I think a year I remember I said is kind of a returning to the classics a little bit, especially after the 2020, because 2020 has made a lot of rich, structured, deep colored wines. Quite a the rich style, ripe style. Some are a bit overripe. I think that's the vintage. But that was also because it's after 19. 19 was kind of warm, right?
Yeah.
And 20 in general was warmer, and also drier.
Yes.
And then 19. We're not talking the coast or the north, and we're talking more about the Central Valley, because.
Yep.
Because Chile is such a big country for winemaking. Speaking of the diversity of the climates, and you have the coast, you have the mountains, you have the north and the south, that are all quite different. But 21 was that kind of a year that sort of returned to the classics. Not a warm year, basically. It was not a very cool year. 22 was actually in the Central Valley. People have this kind of a misunderstanding, I think, about 22. A lot of people thought it was quite warm. But actually, when you see the statistics, it turned out to be a cooler year, especially for Abalda, no? For Millahue, for
we were talking like that, yes.
And Cochagua. So you got a bit of a rain, you got kind of a cooler year, but the wine actually tastes a little bit more, to me, actually pretty complete. 21 has the elegance, and 22 has a little bit more depth and a little bit more fruit in general, and also a bit of structure. But that probably comes from the correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I thought it was probably because you had this kind of a heat wave in the harvest, right? It was a cool year in general, but you had a bit of a heat wave, la ola de calor, no? When you harvest, right?
Well, in our case, because of the wind that came from the ocean, it wasn't that hot. But in terms of the summer, it was a cooler. In fact, for example, during December, it was coolest than the 21. And during the harvest at the 22, we harvest earlier. So we, let's say, avoid, or we call it in Spanish capeamos la ola. So we harvest before that wave. So and it wasn't really for us something that marks the vintage, but it's true. It was a hot wave for just a few days during that time. But in general, that year was cooler. The winter, but the winter the vines are sleeping, right? But during the spring and the autumn was coolest than the 21. So it was a year that as you say, that gives something very special, because there was a sensation at the beginning that it will be warm at the 21, but finally in some areas, and this is what happened to us, it was coolest. So that gave us the chance to have a more tension and vibrancy. And something particular is that when we work, because for us, as you say, the vintage are very, very important. We really think that the vintage gives a personality to the wine. So what we want to have, when you taste VIK, we want to have this kind of connection between them so you can recognize the terroir. But each wine get a different personality because of the vintage. And we start that year to work in the fields in order to ripe the tannins, just getting ripe, not overripe, just getting ripe earlier. So the vintage, we harvest a little bit earlier than the 21 to get, to find that fine tuning in the tannins, but with more natural acidity, more fruit. So it was a very special year in that sense because we also changed a little bit the time of the harvest and how we worked in the fields during the year, especially spring at the beginning of the summer. So it was a very unique in that sense because, as you say, we had that the 2020 was hot. The 21 was one of the very elegant year, beautiful year, an amazing year. But the 22 also has something particular. And in that sense, with your experience and jumping now into the wine, what you found in the wines that you said that you found a little bit more complete the wines, but in general, and then we can talk about the sensation, for example, for you in VIK 22. How was the different, or how you feel that vintage? What's your impression?
Look, let me first add on what you said about the 22 vintage. I think it's also we have to talk about the rainfall as well, like also the places, because you're basically in Cojagua and it can be very different from let's say Puente Alto, from Maipo, right?
Yes.
So Maipo, I remember it was a little drier as well. Like in general, I mean, it was 22 was a drier year, and that made it sound like it's a hotter year. It was actually moderately cool, 22, but not as rainy as 21. 21 give you that sort of elegance. But for VIK, I think, because I remember 21, you changed the whole idea. You sort of redefined VIK, and I tasted beforehand. I tasted the blending components, and
yes,
I still
that's
remember.
True. Yeah, I remember that.
Right?
Yes,
that was really exciting. I was just thought, oh wow, that's really a different perspective, a different element added to the wine. There's beautiful tension on the palate with Cabernet Franc. 70. How much Cabernet Franc did you have?
That one was 77 Cab Franc and 23 Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah. And you sort of kept that. Let's say that's a very successful recipe. Which recipe the word may be not appropriate, but then you from 21 you got 77% of Cabernet Franc, and then 22 you got 74 or 6, about that proportion, right? Of Cabernet Franc. Wow.
The 22, you mean?
Yeah, 22.
Yeah, 22 has a little bit more. It's 79, 21. 79 Cab Franc, okay. 21 Cabernet Sauvignon.
That's more. So I think that's a big change, because before it was more Cabernet Sauvignon than Cabernet Franc, and yes. The protagonist in 21 changed. That really made a big difference. I think that's more important than talking about the vintage. But speaking of the vintage 22 VIK, I remember tasting it. I remember it was a little bit fuller on the palate, a little bit richer, a little bit fruitier almost, and the tannins are slightly more. The wine tastes a little bit more structured, and also with really good acidity. Good fruit, a lot of concentration, but not nothing overdone. It shows the precision of the wine, just enough plushness. I remember the wine used to be more plush, and now it tends to be more detailed, a little bit more restrained, showing more layers and complexity. I think that's a big change. But then the tension part, I think you still have that in 22, just with a little bit more fruit. And maybe a little bit more richness. But the tension, I think that change happened in 2021 with the Cabernet Franc taking the front the front of the stage. So I think that made the difference as well, that we had to consider the blending components of Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc, right?
Yes, that's true. That's true. The 21, we switch. We flip the blend totally the opposite. The last year before the 21 was 78 Cabernet Sauvignon, 22 Cabernet Franc, and the 21 was totally the opposite, because we really start to understand different our terroir, our place. It's something very unique and fantastic, because I've been here already 18 years, and since the very, very beginning, when I arrived, there was nothing, no vines, no winery, no hotel, nothing. But the good thing is that every year I learn something new in this terroir. It's amazing how you start to know your terroir. You start to have this connection, and you start to understand a little bit different every corner. And also the vines has been growing. They have already this 18 years. At the beginning with the 2013, I remember tasting that wine with James. It was an amazing wine, but it was at that time 6 years old vines, and this time is 18 years old vines. And something else that we changed, and we have been talking about this, it's also our winemaking approach. Today, our philosophy continue being holistic, but we change our winemaking approach to this circular winemaking, where we make our own barrels, we toast the barrel with our own oak trees, we make our own clay pots with the clay from the property, the fleuroir, this program that we harvest flowers to bring wild yeast to the winery. All that is new, and the 21 was the first 100% with our circular winemaking. That means that, for example, in 2018, when we started with Barroir, our program for barrels, of course, we were the first winery in Chile making the barrels and toasting the barrels, the first one in South America, in fact. The first one in the world toasting the barrels with our own oak trees. And there was no how in Chile how to make barrels as a winery. So we have to go to France. I remember I went there. Some of the owner of the tonnelleries, like Jean-Luc Sylvain, he helped me to understand the process. Also, they came here to teach us. So the 2018, we only make 25% of the barrels, because we need to learn about it. I have to tell you that the first 100 barrels also we made some mistakes, but it's part of the and you learn something, and some people says that making barrels an art. I have to tell you that when as a winemaker, I thought I knew about barrels before this, but now it's totally different. There's a lot of different details that also makes fine tuning in the wine. You don't know about that when you buy barrels, but when you make the barrels, you start to know more about the oak, how to toast, what you have to do to get this flavor or that flavor. And the 19 was 50%. The 20 was 75%. And the 21 was the first 100% with our own barrels. That's something also that we change. And the first one that get 10% of clay pots in the blend. The 22 was 14. So that's also another change. For you, with your experience, these kind of techniques, what do you think about it? Because it's different, and sometimes I don't know what's the impression. Because when you are inside, and I tell this, we look this from inside, but when you look at from outside, what's your impression?
Well, I mean, you're definitely a sort of pioneer in many things, like doing this sort of barroir, use toasting your own barrels with local trees. Then you have the amphora, that you
Yes.
make in your own amphoras from a local clay. Then you have the stone Vic, which is very pristine. Aged on the mountain in the mountains, and like 1,000 meters above the sea levels, and you have like a few amphora. They're hidden in a specific place, right?
Yes.
In a shaded, like a small forest, right?
Yes.
All these are very innovative. I think that's really fun to do, and I think those attach some sort of sentiments and emotions, and also seeks to improve the quality at the end. I mean, there are many stories behind it, of course, and a lot of people would probably say, "Oh, those are a lot of stories," and what about the wine? So, but finally, it's the wine that really talks. So then I think because the world now is looking for more, I think looking for more purity, because in the past people tend to have always look for the ripeness,
Yes.
and that's like changing, that's evolving, and now people know, okay, less can be more. When you have more, you understand, okay, over ripeness, over extraction, overuse of oak, or you don't know how to use the oak, like too much vanilla, too much coconut, too much that kind of obvious, conspicuous flavors, aromas. They can be just boring, right? All the wine can be the real sense of place, the real sense of fruit. They can be just taken away by the barrels, or by how you the heavy toast of barrels, or how you age the wine. So I think people are now looking more into the purity of the wine, also the drinkability of the wine. If the wine still is drinkable, I mean, a wine that, to me, that people sometimes say, okay, the wine is just really good, but it's not drinkable now. It needs long time to drinking, the aging. I think that has changed. The idea of great wine, I think, starts out really great, and then it ages beautifully. I think, for example, the Bordeaux recent vintage I can recall, that was 2016. A lot of wines. I think that's the vintage. If you really look for that, that's the vintage that you can start drinking early, but then it ages beautifully, and that's the precision. That's the poise. That's the balance. And then you have great vintages like 22, which needs a bit more time in Bordeaux. For Chile, I think a lot of vintages can be like that too, like starting out to drink a little earlier, and then it can also age as well. But I mean, Chile is still not a country with a long history of you don't have a library of 50, 60 vintages, right? Most wineries don't have that. So it really takes time to get there, right?
Yes, in that sense, and from what you say, we can talk about a little bit the trends and the vision, because what you are saying now is where the wine it's going now on the industry, and how on your vision. But yeah, it's true. Today we have. Imagine that our first vintage was the 2010. Remember that we taste those wines together till the 21st at that time. So 12 wines, and yeah, we don't have 60. And sometimes I would like to bring a bottle from, I don't know, 1990, but we started in 2006. But we can see that evolution and the understanding of the terroir, and we can understand from the first one how to get the new flavor and this new expression of this terroir as an experience, and it's amazing to see. You remember when we were tasting all those wines, the evolution of the vineyard, the evolution of the vision, the evolution of the tannins. So all that you said now, in terms of the changing, you can see it in a vertical. We are relatively young. We started in 2006. We planted the vineyard in 2007. Today, 18 years old, probably one of the youngest wineries in this in the industry, to be today one of the players in the great wines of the world. For example, for us and for everybody, James is a a reference. Like everybody look at James and follow James, and you have this event, the great wines of the world today. VIK is one of the players, being very young with different vintages.
Yeah. But I think you've grown really fast, like, and also very innovative. You've developed a very good sort of taste as well. I mean, wine at the end is more about aesthetics. It's more about your taste, and a winemaker should have a good taste. And that's very important for the future development of the winery, I think, and also how do you get there? To me, I think for the I mean, I've tasted most of the vintages with you, I remember, but I think as with most Chilean wineries, I think now people are more confident about, for example, the tannins. How you mentioned about the tannin quality and tannin texture. Nowadays, I think many Chilean wines are getting fresher, and the tannins are getting crunchier. So they get more texture, more tension on the palate, more minerality, instead of just fruit. Like, instead of just oak and fruit, wine is about, at the end, it's more about minerality. Yes. And it's more about like the stony aspect. It has a lot of aspects. That's fire. It has, in Chinese philosophy, you have a bit of, fire, water, soil, yes. Metal, all that kind of feng shui or philosophy, that kind of a thing. But then I think the trend of many Chilean reds, for example, are really getting more confident about the tannins. Then they're getting more reactive. Back then, people were always looking for ultra ripeness, always looking for the hedonistic plushness, very, very fine velvety tannins, which is very important. The quality, you have to ripen the tannins, but then you sort of lose the freshness. You tend to be doing too much to over ripen the tannins, over ripen the fruit. So the physiology of the tannins in the wine totally changed. Yes. Now you really found, okay, we have to keep the freshness, we have to ripen the tannins, but not too much. Yes. So make a wine that is more crocantes, more crunchy, more al dente. That's the key. Now I think a lot of people got that. They're harvesting earlier. They're trying to capture the sense of a place and capture the vintage. And that's the key of evolution, I think, over the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's true. It's part of what, for example, we were talking just a few minutes ago, and that's what we look for. That we work very hard in the fields during the year to ripe the tannins early in the season. Just ripe them when they're just ready. They lose the angle. Let's go in and we harvest earlier, to have more acidity, natural acidity, to have more tension, crunchiness.
Crunchiness. I remember that Chilean winemakers love to talk about using the word reactive. Like the tannins, you can have a little bit of the edginess. Like, yes. It's still the tannins. You want to feel it. You want to have its presence on your palate, but not making chewy or drying tannins. You don't want the tannins from the wood. You don't want too much tannins that are not ripened, right? You want, that kind of tension, that kind of a sort of the edginess that give you that reaction.
Yes,
that's the beauty. That's the beauty of. I mean, the more and more, the more I cover the wines from Chile, the more time I spend in Chile and writing about the wines, the more I hear people talking about this kind of crunchiness, this kind of reactive tannins, which is, I think, really is about the balance of the wine.
Yes,
not just wine style overripe, or I mean it's easy to get that because you're still sunny. Most part of the Central Valley, it's very sunny climate.
Yeah, that's easy. You have to wait and then you have to use over oak. I mean the heavy oak, heavy toast barrels, and that's it. But
you make a heady wine.
Yes, but the most intellectual and more work is the opposite side, where you find that point where the tannins they lose the edge, but still tension. I always call it tension and vibration. So you feel the tannins moving,
Vibration,
but without angles. So you feel that soft, but they move. And they have that kind of tension. They want to run, you know. They want to.
Exactly.
They want to.
They have a speed.
Yes.
Electricity, like the electricity, the acidity, and the tannins. They have the speed on your palate. They're not just dull. They're not just a fluffy.
Yes.
Right. You don't want a fluffy wine. You want something vibrant. I mean, but again, it's about, at the end, it's about balance. You don't want a wine that is too raw and green and sort of having a lot of acidity, but rough tannins. And then you still want, a wine with good ripeness, with good freshness, acidity.
Yes, I agree. And then there's one more point, which is very important, that also take all this that we have been going. It has to be the wine has to have this tension, this vibration, this balance, but in a very elegant way. Not everything at once. It has to be like showing this and that to make this wine, let's say, intellectual, romantic, because in that way also in every glass the wine change. And it becomes an experience. That's something also very important. What do you think about that? An elegant wine, for example, the concept for that, it's a wine that tells you a story and in a very balanced way. How you define that elegant side of a wine?
It has to be more. I associate elegance with poise, with good balance, with nuance. Wines with nuance, with good evolvement in your glass. You want a wine that you constantly go back to it. It changes, evolves. It's not like it will evolve better, of course.
Yes.
I mean, it has this. You smell it, you can get 2-3 notes. Then you smell again, you get another kind of aroma. I mean, it's not in your face. I mean, it's not like you're drinking muscat. Or most Gewürztraminer, it's lychee, it's orange blossom, it's very aromatic. I mean, a wine should be soft spoken, should be complex. It's harder to read into it, but then it takes time to let it, speak up. Let it to talk to you a little more. So that's the wine I'm looking for. The minerality it has, because the minerality kind of mutes the fruit a little bit.
Yes.
So the fruit, and normally it's an easy thing to have, and then you have to think about the freshness of the fruit. But then the minerality it really gives you another layer of complexity. So a wine, I think there are many elements, and an elegant wine needs to be. It needs to be fresh. It needs to be complex. It needs to give you the time to understand it, not just give it once, right? It gives you, like, from time to time, it gives you a bit of this, give you a bit of that. It really is a wine that lasts over a long time, like 4 or 5 hours, maybe over a dinner or lunch. You can always go back to it. Of course, it ages well. So that's more like a great wine. We're not only talking about elegance. That's like a very high quality wines. Normally, we should give those kind of wines 95 plus points. No. Yes.
So in this case, as VIK, for example, as a player in the great wines of the world, with all these characteristics. There's something in particular that you mentioned of this wine that you will say, this is something that I really pay attention on this wine, for example, in that sense that we have been talking about?
Well, I mean, you mean the 2022 vintage?
The 20, yep.
The 22, I think it's really, I really use the word complete. It's complex and complete, and it's quite long. That's a length. The length of it it lasts, like, I remember, lasts quite a while, and it really shows the sunny side of Chile, but restrained. Like, it has the warmth and the generosity from a country like Chile. Like, you have the sunny part of it, but then it has the complexity and the restraint. From you want to find elegance, right? So that's how I define the 22.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, we have been talking. It's amazing how the wine. The time is it's running, and so I would like to go in this last 10 to 10 minutes to go into the wine industry, in the trends, your vision, where the wine is going now, how you see the market. You taste Chilean wines, Argentinian wines, now Bordeaux wines. You have to taste Spanish wine sometimes, or you are doing that also. Sorry. So with that global vision, what's your impression about what's the trends? What's your vision about the market and where the wineries have to go?
The market is hard. No, the market is not drinking. It's drinking a little less. No, I mean, everywhere you go, it's probably the same thing. The U.S., China, globally speaking, is drinking less wine, and young people seem to think wine is not good with health or whatever. I mean, these we can argue, but again, we have to accept the reality. I think people are drinking less, but there's always a way out. People are drinking less, and people are drinking better.
Yeah,
right.
That's important.
Can have less wine, but it's more for an experience. It's not just it's for back 10 years ago. I think the thing when people talk about the French paradox, it's very famous in China. I think French people drink wine, they get healthier. Yep. Like they eat a lot of foie gras, but then why? Because they drink. Why they don't have the heart problems because they drink wine. That's a lie. Okay, so you have to think about accepting the reality that people are putting a question mark on wine regarding health issues. But then why you drink wine? Because you love sharing. You love the experience. You love, this finding complexity, finding the different vintage, what is behind the winery, what's behind the people, and also sharing, having a good time. That's what people should talk about. And also drinking better, drinking not just for the sake of drinking. You're drinking to enjoy.
Yes.
That's a theme. I think that works for most wine regions nowadays. But again, for Chile, I think let's get back to Chile. I think it's quite a dynamic country. I think Spain is definitely very dynamic, and then Chile, it's because it's quite diverse. More and more young people are coming out and making really good wines. The only problem is that they can be really intellectual wines, and they can be just not very attainable. It's not available everywhere because the production can be just 1,000 bottles, 2,000 bottles. It comes from a single terroir, a single parcel, vineyard. It can be very specific, more like a Burgundy style. That's definitely coming. I see in Spain, in Rioja, in Chile, even in Ribera Duero, that there's a trend, like a movement. But then in Chile, you have so many other varieties that I think is under-discovered in the past. Like in the south, you have País, you have Sansol, right? Those really interesting. You have Semillon. I think they're on the rise. Carignan, no, the delicious Carignan with really bright acidity, blue fruit. There are a lot of diversity. Of course, the Cabernets and Carmeneres are still very important, but I think now you see there's more things going. There are more things going on in Chile, and that really made a country really diverse and fun, and people really are willing to discover Chilean wines. I also really enjoyed a lot of the Chardonnays this year. From the north, it's really, really making a difference, I think.
Yeah, and now some Cabernet Franc too, showing something different.
It wasn't the first choice, no.
Yeah.
I remember, like you guys have the good Cabernet Francs, and then the Maquis has pretty good Cabernet Francs.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it was always playing the second fiddler, Cabernet Franc. And now with you guys putting it as a protagonist, I
Yes.
think Cabernet Franc is really. I mean, your neighbor country. Think about Argentina. There are many Cabernet Francs. A beautiful blend of Cabernet Franc with Malbec. You know,
Yes.
Malbec's
Yes.
it's brooding. It's big with fruit. It's approachable and friendly, but quite round. Almost needs a bit of a linearity. Needs a bit of movement that
Yes.
really be complemented by Cabernet Franc, and that drive, that tension, that linearity that Cabernet Franc offers is incredible.
Yep. And in this sense, and just to finish, it has been very, very interesting, this approach. I agree. You know, the wine, it's an experience. It tells you something. It tells you about the terroir. It tells you about the people that it was involved there. Tell you about the story of that place. You share with your family, with friends, during a dinner or no food. You know, there are some wines that they're so intellectual and that sensational and so good that you don't need to have food, or you just have wine with your best friend, with family. It put the people together. I agree with all that, and also teach you about different regions. But there's something that always we talk about. It is like we're talking about somebody that already knows about wine. But if you are starting, how you get into this, how we can make easier the way to get into this story and to understand wine for the one who is starting. That's a very challenging thing, you know?
Yeah, I think we should really, like for us, people who work in the wine industry, the journalists, the winemakers, people really have to jump out of the box, because we're all in the box. We always think what we know, what we believe is correct. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we've been talking about freshness. We've been talking about this kind of al dente texture, crunchiness. But for people who just got into wine, I think for most people still look for opulence, big fruit, you know, ripeness. I mean, that's okay. That's totally fine. Don't judge people's palates. Don't, you know, try to educate people, but don't do it too much. It's just because when you don't know, you always look for more, right?
Yes.
Imagine you don't know about a drink, you ask for more, right? The more the better. And
yes.
that's the common sense. So I think we should understand. We should give a better understanding to, and be more inclusive about people's taste, and that's totally fine. Nowadays, I think it's a more balanced taste. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I think the taste was more driven by the other side, looking for sheer ripeness.
Yes.
Maybe some oaky flavors. Now you have more balanced taste in general, I think. But then I don't want to overemphasize and overstress the intellectuality that we always talk about. That's also dangerous, right? For people, everyone is entitled to their taste. I think everyone is entitled to like whatever they like. That's totally fine. I think for young people, it shows respect. It shows how inclusive and how diverse the wines are.
Mm-hmm. So the message should be then, don't be afraid to taste something new. That will help you to understand a region. That will help you to understand a new wine, a new sensation.
Exactly.
Be open to taste. Exactly. Don't be afraid.
Open to taste more. That's probably the best. Compare. For me, the best way of learning to taste is comparing.
Yes.
Compare this. Always buy 2 bottles or 3 bottles. Don't just buy one. Yeah. You probably don't remember that, because you can buy one today and tomorrow you buy another one. Buy 2 bottles together, buy 3 bottles together. Maybe from the same vintage, same country, similar regions, similar grape varieties.
Yes.
I mean, you really or different. I mean, by different themes. That's the best teacher, I think. Of course, you can get nowadays. You can learn about wines everywhere, in YouTube, online, all sort of education.
Yes.
You can, but then at the end, you should taste more. Always enjoying going to the wine fairs. Talking to people, trying to understand. Right. That's just that's the key.
Well, great message. I like that one that you have to buy 2 or 3 bottles. That's a good one because you can go back and have the sensation again, and then you can make a comparison with others. So great. Well, we are just getting at the end of the time. Of course, it has been very, very exciting to talk to you. It has been an honor. Thank you so much for your time, Zekun. I know that you are very, very busy. I know that you taste. How many bottles do you taste during the year?
Yeah, I told it's around 7,000 bottles.
Wow.
Maybe a bit less or a bit more. So the number is about that. I basically taste about 35 to 40 bottles a day. So
wow.
It comes to about 6,000 to 7,000 bottles.
A lot of work. A lot of work. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I know that it's not easy for you. You also travel a lot, and it has been a pleasure, an honor, as I said. And thank you so much for being with us in our first episode. And hopefully see you soon. I'll be going to the James, Great Wines of the World in Asia. So
great.
See you there.
Thank you, Cristian. Gracias. Nos vemos.
Muchas gracias, Zekun. Ha sido un placer. Gracias. Chao, chao.
Chao, chao.
Okay, so we already finished this episode. Thank you so much for being with us to be part of this conversation. We will be back with a new episode. Will be another conversation about wine, about vintages, about the VIK 21, about the VIK 22. Follow us this episode, and we'll have an amazing experience here talking about wine and the experience of the wine, the experience of the terroir, and this kind of friendly world of wine where you meet a lot of interesting people. So thank you so much. Cheers, and see you in the next episode. Bye.